I'm X O'Connor, and you're watching the Made It in Music podcast. I'm sitting here today with Tommy Sjöström, a fantastic songwriter signed to our publishing company. How are you doing today, Tommy?
That's right. I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah? Enjoying your trip here? You're in from Sweden, right?
Yeah, that's right. Been here 2 weeks now.
2 weeks. On your way home?
Yeah, I'll leave today. Miss my family so much, but yeah, I've had a great time here. So
How's your trip been? What have you been doing?
just writing a lot, just hanging out with a bunch of people. Got a lot of people that's become good friends here now. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's fun. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you've had a great trip.
Yeah.
You ready to dive into some of the depths of the podcast?
Shoot away.
All right. Well, can we start with, what was the moment you made your first dollar in music?
Oh, man. It's not too long ago. It's probably a couple of years ago when I was a part of like the Swedish Pentecostal movement. Decided to do an album with a bunch of new like Swedish songs because the tradition in like the Swedish churches have been they've sung a lot of old songs like for a long time, so we need to get more songs in Swedish. So they decided to do an album in Swedish. So I just was invited to a writing camp they had and got a couple of songs on that album and made me a couple of $100, maybe $200-$300. So
very cool. Yeah, and it's just grown from there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's starting. I mean, it's a slow process when you get into it, but yeah.
So, what was the moment then that enabled you to kind of go full time into music?
That's a good question. I worked as an audio. I worked in audio production for like 8 years.
Like on the recording side or like live side?
No, the recording side. I did a lot of like voiceover recordings and audio design, sound design, and music for like TV ads and radio and like corporate videos and stuff like that. Yeah. So I decided to quit my job there back in 2015, I think, or 2014. So that's when I decided to start my own business instead. So I did kind of what I've been doing before that, but I wanted to start my own business just to make sure I had the time or like being able to decide what I'd do with my time. Yeah. So I did some of the audio production stuff on the side and just started writing more and started coming over here to the States to write with people over here as well.
And then somewhere along there, you met Seth.
Yeah, that's right.
So how did that kind of come about?
Yeah, I mean it's a long story, but our church we released a project in English, and somehow it got in the hands of a couple of people over here in the States. So we just started coming over here, had a bunch of meetings with people, and just started to get to know people, and one relationship led to another, and then I had this conversation with Chad Segura at Centricity, and he said that he knew a guy who once in a while goes to Sweden because he's married to a Swedish girl, and they're supposed to go this summer. You should definitely catch up with him and see if you could write or something like that. So he connected us, and I just went to see him, and we wrote for a day. And just a great time hanging with him. Yeah. And then I came back. So that was the summer 1.5 years ago. And then I went back to Nashville like that fall. And we met again and wrote for a day. Me and him and Riley Friesen, who's also here with Full Circle. And then they came back to Sweden, Seth and Celie and their daughter to Sweden. They went to Stockholm and up north, and then decided to come down to Gothenburg where we live and visit me and my family. So we hung out there for a couple of days and just hit it off really well. So sometime just right after that, like he just reached out to me, and so I thought, asked if I wanted to partner up or do some things together.
Dude,
so,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So literally, you weren't lying. It's very fresh. Past couple of years, made your first dollars in music. You've come into the thing full time. Yeah. And now here you are making constant trips over to the States. So as you've kind of grown as a writer, what have you kind of done to like, do you do anything to help support writers around you? Because I know from talking with Seth and Salih, especially in the Christian music world in Sweden, it's a much smaller group of people. Is there like something that you guys do together to kind of empower each other and champion each other a little bit?
Yeah, well, we try to do that, and that's really something that's on my heart, because there's not really community of like songwriting in Sweden, like in the Christian world. It definitely is in the pop world, but we need that. I want to help bring like what Nashville has, like in a smaller scale, but I want to bring that to Sweden as well, because the co-writing thing is not really big over there. So I've been trying to lead that in my church, like, you know, do what I can to help other writers to develop, and you know, just for them to write with someone else and not just sit on their own and, you know, do half-finished songs all the time, because that's a struggle. Like, it's so easy to just like come up with a bunch of ideas and never finish them, but it's always good to get in a room with someone else and you get their perspective on things. And so I do that as much as I can, just meet with people in my church especially, and in my town, like where I live. Just not that you're like really trying to write a hit every time. It's just like doing it for the sake of, you know, developing others and yourself, you know. Well,
they say it's like a muscle. Like if you don't develop it and use it, you know, it can atrophy and all that. So there's got to be a lot to just writing and writing and writing.
So true. I mean, just being consistent in what you do, that's the whole thing. Like, if I don't write for a month or like a couple of weeks, it's so much harder to get into that writing again, you know.
Man, that's awesome. Well, we're glad that, you know, you're reaching people over there and pushing. Co-writing is such a powerful part of music making in the United States. Like at Full Circle especially, we're just so team-based that, you know, Seth and I co-produce everything together. You know, he co-writes all the time. There's just something to be said for having people around, just another set of ears or another mind to bounce ideas off of. It's such a useful tool, especially in a creative field where, you know, everyone kind of interprets things differently. It's great. And so we love that you're bringing that across the pond.
Yeah. And you gotta try it out. Like you're probably gonna write with a bunch of people that you don't really connect with. But somewhere along the line, you're going to find someone that you really, really click with. And so me and my friend Lucas, he's the main drummer in our church. He's like, we really hit off as like when it comes to production and stuff like that. So we try to do as much as we can together. And he brings in a perspective that I don't have at all. So I mean, you just got to start where you are and try to find someone that helps you, or like
that's strong where you're
pushes you in a direction that just going to develop you as a writer.
That's awesome. That's huge. It's great to be able to embrace that and move forward with it. It's awesome. Well, let's jump into what we like to call the Full Circle 5, which is 5 quick questions for you, just to you know, just kind of see, you know, dig into your personality a little bit. So first question is there a book or a record that you frequently recommend to people?
Oh man, that's a good question. I'm not a frequent reader, really. I want to be, like, so since Christmas I've actually I think I read 2 books, and that's huge for me. One book that I'm reading right now, and I definitely recommend it. It's the song that totally lost the title now, but Amanda Ferguson from Hillsong. Songs of Heaven. I think it's called Songs of Heaven. She's from Hillsong in Sydney. She wrote this book about songwriting, and it's really about writing music for the church. So it's really good. And you know, since I'm a part of Hillsong, like, you know, that's a you know, the writers in Hillsong and all that are, you know, have been like huge inspiration to me, like for so many years. So that's a really good book that I definitely recommend to someone who wants to write music for their church.
What about record? Do you have a favorite record right now that you would highly recommend people listening to?
Well, I'm really, you know, listening a lot to Corey Asbury's latest album, and I love it because it's just feels like he's just so raw and authentic and honest, and I love that stuff. that kind of stuff. We can just hear people's heart behind the songs, and you know, to get to know their story, and you hear that like through the songs as well.
Yeah, you get to experience it.
Yeah, so that's an album that I'm really digging at this time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So a big thing we talk about at Full Circle a lot is learning by either mistakes or mentorship. And we talk a lot about mentorship. So mistakes is one we've been trying to focus on a little bit, because if you have a failure, it's only successful for you if you learn something from that failure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So do you have a favorite failure, like a failure, something that happened to you where it was bad, but what you got out of it changed you and pushed you forwards positively?
Oh man, that's such a good question. Well, I don't know. When I quit my job as being a full-time, audio producer, I think that transition. I mean, I wanted to do that transition like for 3 years or so. When I finally did it, I could probably have done it like, smoother, like in a better way. I try to be like as honest as possible I could, but like why I wanted to start my own business and focus on music, because that's what like really where my heart was.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do this audio production thing on the side just for that to allow me to do music, and I could probably have done that transition smoother, definitely. But I learned from that mistake, and it really got me to a point where I was able to do it. I mean, it was a huge risk. I mean, it's a big leap out onto the water,
Yeah, for sure.
For a couple of years, like, yeah. So if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have seen God's hand on it, and I wouldn't have gotten to this point where I'm at right now if I didn't take that leap of faith. But as I said, I could probably have done that transition smoother, and just being more, I don't know, protecting relationships better. Yeah. I think that's something that I've really learned on the way, and it's basically the whole thing. Like if you want to make it in music, like, I mean, it all starts with the relationships.
Yeah.
It doesn't start with the song. It starts with the relationships.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the songs will come along the way. Yeah.
For sure. That's great, man.
Yeah.
So before you dove completely in full time, before you made that step in, before you took that leap of faith, what was the number one thing that was holding you back from doing it?
Might have been fear, I think. Probably a fear of what other might think about it,
Yep.
And I mean, like my situation doing this, trying to proceed, trying to like accomplish a career or whatever you want to call it, in music, and especially Christian music in Sweden, is pretty hard because it's not a big community, in the Christian world with songwriters and producers. Those who are really talented, some of them make it in pop music, but so I felt like what I was doing was pretty new. Like I didn't have any example to look at and follow. So I think fear was kind of holding me back a bit in the beginning. I always knew what God wanted me to do. I knew that this was on my heart, and this was what God wanted me to go for. Like one day. But at all, I know God's timing is always the best, and I kind of want to quit my job like for probably 3 or 4 years before I actually did it. But I'm glad I didn't do it any sooner, because I felt like the time when I did it was the right time to do it. But then actually just going for it, and when I felt like God was just opening doors over here in the States, I went with it, even though I didn't make any money at that time, and being a man, supposed to provide for your family, and all that puts a lot of pressure on you.
Oh, absolutely.
But I have the best wife in the world. She's been so supportive, and we do this together, and we feel like this is the direction that God is calling us to. So, So I guess like fear was holding me back a bit in the beginning, but then I just felt like not too long ago that I'm gonna give it my all.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that I do it the right way, and always making sure that I build relationships first, and making sure as well like that I'm rooted, like I'm planted in a church, and I'm planted somewhere. That I don't just go run off.
Yeah, you got a home base.
Yeah, it's so important. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's fast forward a little bit. What's something that you're working on right now that you have that's got you extremely excited?
Oh man, I've just written a bunch of stuff these 2 weeks when I've been here, and just pitching songs all over the place right now. So I'm super excited about that. Got some songs coming out soon. Looks like it. So I'm very excited about that. I'm not sure if I can like say what exactly is coming out, but I'm excited about that. And looking forward to the next trip here to Nashville again, and I'll bring the family next time.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So
Man, well, we're excited to meet the family. I've never met your family.
Yeah.
So, okay, final question of the Full Circle 5. So let's say that you had to start completely over. Your business just disappeared one day, but you still have all of the knowledge that you've gained through your course in music. But you had to start completely over. Is there anything you would do differently? Or what would you do? Would you even do the same thing?
That's such a good question. I don't think I would have done a lot of things differently, actually. Because it basically started with me just being, planted in a church, doing what I could, to help, bless that church, to use my gifts in that church. And that was the sole purpose, like why I even started writing songs. I went but before I was a part of Hillsong, I grew up on a small island on the Swedish west coast, and that was a small, tiny Pentecostal church. No, well, that's a funny story in itself. I thought it was a Pentecostal church up till I was like 17. Turned out it was a Baptist church.
Okay,
whatever. I don't care so much about the labels as long as we believe in the same things.
Absolutely.
So I was a part of that church, and I didn't have any friends in church really when I was growing up because there were no people in my age. But my sisters basically dragged me to church to start playing drums in the youth choir.
Okay.
So I ended up doing that, and one thing led to another. Suddenly I was playing the acoustic guitar, and then I was singing, and suddenly I was leading worship with my sisters, and I just felt the need for songs, like for my church. And that was a church for we probably had like 30 people on a Sunday, or 50 or something like that if it was a good Sunday. So I just started writing songs for that because our church needed it. So like if I was putting together a set list for that Sunday, I just felt like, okay, we need a song like this, and I would just go on and write it and then introduce it that Sunday. So that was the whole purpose for me starting writing songs. And I think my heart is really in worship music. So if you're like, if that's what you're going after, a career as a songwriter, writing for the church, that's what you gotta do. You gotta make sure you're planted in the church and write for that church, because that's where it starts. And I did that. Made sure I stayed planted. I just focused on that for 15 years before anything started happening. So
you had a nice foundation.
Yeah. Of course, you wish the journey would have been quicker, or that would be a shorter journey. Yeah. Sometimes, but I don't regret anything. I've loved the whole journey. I love being a part of the worship team. I've been leading worship for 15 years now, or 14 years or something like that. And I love that. I love the church, and So I don't think I would have done anything really.
You're pretty happy with how things have come together?
Yeah, I am. And well, as soon as you realize that everything starts with a relationship, that the better it is. You know.
Yeah, it's an eye opener.
Don't try to kick doors in. You know, just make sure you get to know people first, and they will have a chance to get to know you and your heart. And and I'm sure God will just bless that into whatever He has planned for you.
I love it, man.
Yeah,
I love it. So you kind of touched on it for a second, but is there anything you're currently working on that you want to talk about and can talk about? Anything you want to push our viewers and listeners towards?
Well, yeah. I have a song with We Are Messengers, actually, that I wrote with Seth, mostly,
awesome,
and Darren Mulligan from
Very Cool.
We Are Messengers. So that was actually my first real, big cut.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. And
do you know the name of the song?
The song is called Simple.
Awesome. Very cool.
It was called Simple. I think that's what the title is now. I don't know.
I like the name, so come on.
It's simple.
Yeah.
So I'm really stoked about that. And I don't know, like maybe we have to edit this, but
yeah.
And then this song I wrote with Mia Fields and Andrew Holt, and for Jesus Culture.
Yeah.
Chris Kalala is part of that as well, and they recorded it last weekend.
I was gonna say you said you were watching a broadcast and you saw it
that thing
being
was
performed.
So funny. Yeah, I knew Chris Kalala was really digging the song, but I wasn't sure like if they loved it that much and if they wanted to record it. But I was just watching like Insta stories live, and I knew Jesus Culture had their Encounter conference, and just watching the service they had, like the worship event, and suddenly I recognized the song. Oh man, that's a good song. I heard that before, and it took me a second to realize. No, wait, I was a part of writing that. So that was so funny. I didn't know they were doing it, but
that's awesome.
Yeah, so they did it a couple of times during that conference. So that was awesome. That's huge for me. Like
that's huge. Period. Congrats, man.
I used to listen so much to Jesus Culture. I still do, but I remember their album Common Way.
Yeah,
we had that live DVD. We pretty much played it every day at home. So that's amazing. I'm grateful, like, for the privilege just to do this and just to hear a church, sing your songs. That's amazing. I'm so humbled. It's amazing that God chose to use me for that.
That's awesome, man. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Yeah.
So as we're wrapping up, how can people interact with you? Social media, all that stuff. Where's the best place to find Tommy Sjöström?
Yeah, it's probably on Instagram. That's where I'm at. I don't do a bunch of other platforms.
All right. What's your handle?
So it's Tommy Sjöström. I probably have to spell that.
Yeah.
Well, Tommy is just TOMMY. Sjöström is SJOSTROM. Also Tommy Sjöström.
Tommy.
Yeah.
Man, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
on
so
this
much
episode of the Made It in Music podcast.
Yeah. It's a great honor.
Dude, well, thank you. We're excited to have you and excited to get more tunes from you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you next week.